Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with Mystic Gen Mara, and this is the last Thursday of the month is when I'm last Tuesday of the month is when I'm recording this. So what I've been doing is working with angels, and since we have went through quite a few of those, we can go ahead and try a few other spiritual creatures, if you will. And so that's kind of what I think I'll do on the last week of the month, is do an introduction to different realms, different spiritual energies and creatures and beings and fun things like that. So some will have meditations with them, some will not, or they'll have them later on. It's more of let's have some fun and just kind of explore what's out there. This one I don't have any pictures selected or anything like that. Unfortunately, it was a little difficult to find ones that were free use. So we will work on that for the next one, because this is part 1 and part 2 will be released the last week of December. And so we'll hop right into this. And so when you think of the fairies, what do you see? Tinkerbell type fairies, little pixies flitting about, sprites, or do you see the small humanoid creatures with delicate wings? Or do you see things like leprechauns or gnomes? Those are all different classes of what is collectively known as the Fae, which is the family of the fairy. In reality, there's depending on who you talk to, up to several hundred classes of fairy, which is a lot and is a little bit unnecessary to go into detail on all of them, because a lot of them are similar. But the fairy realm is a high frequency realm. It's not as high frequency as, say, the angelic or the dragon realm, but it is significantly above our signature energy and level. Even if with the shift into these higher frequencies, like the fifth dimension and the fourth density, if you follow the teachings of Ra, the fairy realm is actually above even those, so it's significantly higher than where we're at right now. Now, I will say there was a time, around 2,000 years ago, when the energy vibration was closer together. The fairies were actually influencing our energy field, and this is where we get a lot of our current knowledge of the fairy, is from this time period. The myths, the legends are pretty detailed, and the power of the Fae was extremely well known, especially if you go to the Northern European religious beliefs. The Fae was something that you either loved or were feared, sometimes both, depending on which clan you were working with. First and foremost, the fairy realm is concerned with this planet's overall health and well-being, which differs from the angelic realm and the dragon realm, which consider our spiritual development and us as a species, or as another sentient being, because the dragons see us as a sentient being that needs to be guided into a higher frequency. But the Fae are considered the guardians and guides of the planets, minerals, and the source of Gaia herself. They love to work with humans that are willing to work with the earth, do crystal energy and therapy, and work with your hands, gardening and raising house plants, doesn't really matter what kind, taking care of animals, things like that. That's what's going to attract the blessings and the positive attention of the fairy. They are not bound to the light, though, and this is something that's unique about them, considering we usually think of high frequency beings being 100% positive, no negative side effects, nothing. But that's not the case with these little guys. Well, big guys too. Being a lower frequency than the angels, they have similar free will to humanity, so they have a lot of the same temptations, if you will. There are light workers amongst the Fae, and there are some rather dark, borderline sinister. To me, I find them all interesting, so I don't see them as truly evil, but some people would call them evil. The Fae has a reputation of being tricksters, and when you first start working with them, you'll start to notice things will just happen. I'll get into that more later, but it's kind of entertaining when you start paying attention. A lot of the reason that they are considered this goes to the fact that they see us as energy fields and energy bodies. They don't look at your physical appearance. So with that, you may say one thing, but your energy, your aura, the thought pattern that you're putting out says something completely different. And the fairy is going to respond to what you're projecting, not the words you're speaking. So the Fae in this respect are extremely honest beings, and they don't understand dishonesty. It's not something that they can fully work with. It's not in their, even the bad ones, that's not how they work. So this is a warning or a heads up, or however you want to look at it. Never try to deceive the Fae. Never lie to a fairy. Be literal with your intentions and honest with your words. Make sure your words match that vibration you're putting out. The trickster aspect is because the person asks an open question or sets a loose intention or a loose agreement with the fairy to work with, and you get something that fits the parameters of the question but not the specific thing you were looking for. So then people think, I've been tricked, the fairy did this. Not really, you didn't really make it clear in the first place, so they took a creative license with your request. There is a legend that if the Fae were angered, they would still steal children from the family who committed the offense. Angering the Fae was unethical farming, unethical mining practices, disrespecting a Scythian or a fairy mound, which is where they would live, or trapping a fairy. These are not things you want to do. Basics, these are just some thoughts to go think about as you're working with, if you choose to. At this point, I'm just giving you some information because not everybody wants to work with these guys. And they don't usually interfere in human lives unless we put ourselves in their pathway, which is what can happen. But some things to consider. A Scythian or a Shean, depending on, it's spelled Scythian, but it's said Shean. It's a language difference. Is a fairy mound. It's the location of the fairy realm. It can hold entire universes within one small mound or hill. It was believed that you could enter a fairy mound if you were invited or during cross-quarter days. And these are what we would call the bonfire days. Beltane, Mabon, Samhain, and Imbolc, where the veil between the worlds was actually thin, which allowed the fairies and the humans in the spirit world to really interact with each other, because that veil that separates us through the different realms becomes very thin, which is not always a bad thing. These were times when, time worked really weird in the fairy, just in general. An hour or a minute in human time could be hundreds of years in the fairy, or you could feel like you were there for a minute and come out and it would be a decade or two later. Time slips are very, very common when you work with the fairy realm because of their higher frequency. They don't have a time frame like we do in this dimension and density that we exist in at the moment. So when you work with the Fae, and this is something that I found to be unique to them, always make sure that if you're making a request of the Fae, that you always offer something in return. So you make an offering. You don't have to do this a lot with the Dragon Realm or the Angelic Realm or several other different spiritual realms that are out there. But the fairies are unique in this request, or in this aspect. It's something that I have tried, and I've tried without. So I've tested this a few times, and let me tell you, if you work with the Fae, the offering is a way to show that you're serious about what you're doing. You're serious about the topic. It's also a sign of respect. The fairy are not a quote-unquote genie. They are not a law of attraction type entity. They're sentient, and they will be very offended if slighted by you expecting them to do something without offering anything in return. Bad call. Sorry, I found my notes here. A basic, simple offering, and this one is pretty much accepted across every clan of the Fae, is raw milk, not pasteurized. You can use pasteurized if you don't have an option, but preferably something raw, and honey from your local area. These are pretty much the basics of most offerings to the fairy. So you'll mix those together and you'll leave them out by the back door of your house. It's always the back door. Don't put them out the front door. If you live on an apartment, if you have a deck, set it out there. If not, put it by an open window that's facing the outside. You don't want to set it like next to the front door or into the hallway. That's not gonna work. But you want to put it in something that's open, like a bowl. So if the milk is there in the morning, you can just pour it along the back of the property. If you live, somewhere where you can't do that, take it out to the local park and discreetly dispose of it into some soil, because at that point, the fairy have drawn out the essence or the life of that mixture, and what's left is really inert. There's nothing there, and you don't want to. You never eat something that's been offered to a spiritual being. It's just not very, very bad. You can leave out sweets, shiny objects, small crystals, and for some of the clans, you can leave out forms of liquor. There is some of the warrior clans prefer things like whiskey and rum. They really enjoy that. The more healer-based ones tend to be more to the shiny objects and crystals. So I've read a legend at one time, and this is a common theme, but it's not something that's talked about in a lot of spiritual communities because they want to ignore that we as humans and the fairy as their own beings have a propensity for competition, and that can lead into violence and warfare. It's just what it is. I'm not going to say good or bad, but if you ignore the darkness, you always are going to have more of it. So it's finding that balance. And that's the one thing that I will say the fairy has done better than humanity has. They war with each other on occasion, but it's usually because one side is stepping up too much, and so they bring it back into balance by going to war. But back to the offerings. There are legends out there that offerings were made of flesh or blood. I do not advocate for this because I don't work with those entities, and I don't recommend anyone else do that. But you've heard of the term a pound of flesh. Well, it comes from some of these old beliefs. And it was a pound of flesh or a pint of blood were the original two stories in these legends. And from my understanding, it was you could use a freshly butchered animal, like if you went out hunting, something like that, and then save the blood and a pound of the meat specifically for this purpose. In some cases, there were talks of it being human. Don't even go there. That's not a good call. Blood is very sacred in every culture, and that is something you don't want to mess with. So, to me, there are references to working humans in that way, offering them as the dinner, basically. And I don't recommend that. I don't this is more for historical references, because if you look back to the ancient cultures, they were working in their minds and probably physically, because they have very vivid descriptions, with things that were standing in front of them. And so there was a different world. As we've all shifted and grown and rearranged our lives into different realms, things have faded away for a reason. And I honestly feel that the closer that the angels and the dragons have come to this realm, the more they've pushed out that part of it because it was unnecessary. Now, the offerings of crystals and herbs and things like that, I still fully believe in, fully work with if you're going to work with the fairies. But you don't have to work with them. Like I said, this is just educational. The fairy clans are not exclusive to the small pixie Tinkerbell types. Some, historically, could be as tall as 10 feet. There were legends of these beings being worshipped as gods. So in the northern European territories, the Fae was something to be feared and revered because in their minds, they were deities. They were these massive beings that were pretty fantastical, really. They were magically powerful, and they still wield that same magical energy today. It's just since they don't walk amongst us like they apparently used to, we don't notice it as much. Different clans worked with the different elements, the different flowers, different minerals, crystals, trees, rivers, lakes, and there were even deities specific or fairy specific to the ocean, its tides, and deep seas. The Fae is a really fascinating group to work with if you choose to. And it's a mutual decision. You can maybe have the urge to do that, and they'll look at you and be like, you are not ready. Then that's their decision. But working with them in a respectful way is a good way to develop a relationship with them. They are amazing gardeners. They can teach things so far beyond what a lot of physical teachers can teach you. And when it comes to the healers amongst the Fae, they are just one step below the angels. They have amazing healing potential within them. And they are virtually immortal. Some of the ones that are currently roaming around today existed 2,000 years ago. And so that's why they're always really good teachers, because more than likely they were around when that historical incident occurred. So, one thing just to keep in mind, if you have a pesky fairy, someone that's just causing a lot of chaos and they're not helping, they're just being an obnoxious little, and they do that, they don't like anything iron. Not so much steel, it's specific to iron, and this is why, we'll go through this. Iron nails used to be hung over doors, or they were worn as necklaces, or placed near cribs to keep fairies at bay. And if you'll look back to some of the old the wood carving type paintings that they used to have, you'll notice that sometimes a baby, especially in Northern Europe, would have a iron nail tied around their neck, and it was to keep the fairies away. Iron horseshoes are lucky, and they can also keep the fairy away. Just make sure to put the horseshoe up, that way it catches your luck versus pours it out. And in our subconscious parts of our brain, this is part of the reason that iron bars were used in jails. Iron blocks spiritual energy in a list of different ways, since the Fae is a spiritual energy. Specifically, this can become a soul trap. It can actually drain your soul and make you exhausted. The Fae are very, very sensitive, as they are a higher frequency, so the iron is extremely detrimental to them. And if you don't believe me, go to a retired jail, or if they do a tour of one close to you, and just pay attention to the energy of the jail. It's draining. It just makes you tired. It's exhausting to be around it. And even within the jails themselves, they have some violence that occurs. It's just what it is. But you'll notice that there's a different energy around those people. They've had to harden themselves to survive the environment. The environment itself is extremely rough on people, especially when they have the iron bars. So if you're interested in meeting with a fairy, or at least being open to the possibility, because again, it's a two-way street, we can journey into a meditational space. It's very light meditation. It's not deep. And we will go to visit a Shein, the fairy mound, to request a fairy to contact you if you choose. If you don't have to watch the rest of the video. If this is something that you don't want to do, like I said, you don't have to watch any further. I'm going to move into a little bit of a meditation with this. So if you want to make some, maybe make a contact, or maybe have something come up, which is fine. They can be a lot of fun. They can also be little toads at times, just as a heads up. So the one thing about this, you can watch this meditation wherever you want. It doesn't matter. What the parameters that I have set with this meditation and working with my guides is that this is going to be active for 7 days. So if you do this meditation, pay attention to what happens over the next 7 days or so. Look for little things that will remind you of the fairy. Shiny coins that just show up out of nowhere. Like you're walking across the floor and there's a penny laying on the ground that wasn't there 5 minutes ago. Things like that are very common for them to be like, hi, I'm here. A flower that didn't have any buds on it whatsoever. This is one that I've noticed a lot, especially working with the healing fairies. Flowers that don't have any buds, like plants, they're just greenery at that point, will mysteriously start to bloom within this next 7 days. And pay attention to your dreams. They are fairly telepathic, and so sometimes they will talk to you in a dream state because your conscious mind is out of the way, so you're more receptive at that point. Or look for, like, the divas are like this. They tend to hang out with your plants a lot, and so if you'll catch out of the corner of your eye in your peripheral vision, you might notice little balls of light dancing around your plants. You might notice little, like, not so much like eyeball floaties, but like little floating things that don't move like normal. Um, and the other one to keep an eye out for is notice if you suddenly have a fairy ring that appears in your lawn. If you have a lawn, we're moving into the winter months, so this one's not as common to happen in the winter months. But in the summertime, a fairy ring is actually a fungus, and a lot of people get really upset about them. But it's a fungus that grows underneath the ground, but it makes a almost perfect circle, and it's usually a deeper, richer green. The most common way to get rid of them is fertilize it. Heavily fertilize your lawn, and I don't think it really makes the fairy ring go away. I think it matches the green to the green. So you have that deeper green covers the whole lawn. But a fairy circle is a way for you to know that the fairies are around, because that's one of the ways that they access back and forth between the realms. So, I don't have any music for this. I'm working on some ideas on how to make that happen. It's I'm trying to find copyright-free type music is interesting. But I am looking at some options right now. So, for now, just settle in and relax. Make sure you're not operating any machinery. Don't drive. Don't be juggling knives or swords or something like that. Just sit down, settle in, and relax. You don't have to get into any special positions. This is just a guided meditation. So get relaxed and get comfortable and start to breathe deeply, bringing your inhales into your belly, breathing in beautiful, cleaning white light. Exhaling, allowing any stress or tension to fall away from your shoulders and your neck. Take a nice deep breath in, bringing in that beautiful white light of creation. Exhale, feeling your muscles and your bones settle in, allowing them to sink into the chair that you're sitting in. Take another deep breath in, breathing in that beautiful, cleansing white light. Feeling your vibration lift as you exhale, releasing any negative thoughts or darkness that you feel. Keep breathing slowly and deeply, bringing in that beautiful white light, allowing it to flow through your body, and allow any tension to release and relax. As you continue to breathe deeply, feel your attention drawn to the center of your mind, your third eye area. Sense, see, or feel the door to your mind. It can be a great wooden door or a great metal door, but it's a great big door. Approach this door and notice that it swings silently open. Stepping out of that door, you see a great path in front of you, but you see a smaller trail wandering off towards the left. You follow this small winding trail down a small hill, feeling the air alive with magical energies. You walk along and notice that the trail is lined by mushrooms. Big mushrooms, little mushrooms, the ones that are safe to eat, and the very poisonous ones. Whites and tans to reds, even some you've never seen before, blues and green mushrooms. You continue to wander down this small hill, noticing that the grass is deep and rich, and the mushrooms are literally everywhere. As you come around a small bend, you notice that this trail opens up into a great lawn. The mushrooms line the outer edge of this lawn. In the exact perfect center of the lawn is a great mound, a small hill if you choose. Looking around, you notice that the grass inside the mushroom circle is uniformly trimmed to a very short length. It looks kind of like a golf course, very green and short. You feel drawn towards the mound. Walking up to the mound, its solid green grassy covering is just fascinating. There's no entrance as you walk around this mound, but you know that there's a way that you can get inside at some point. Finally, after making a couple of circles around the mound, you stop moving. Focus your attention on the door to the fairy realm. Bring all of your energy into making the door appear. And as you're looking at the mound, you notice that a door suddenly appears in front of you. It's wooden, intricately carved, no handle or knob to mar the surface, only this very unique design. The design can be a Celtic knot or just vines. It will be very unique for you. You lean forward and you knock 3 times on the door. The knock echoes through the wooden door, through the air. The air vibrates as you rap each knock. And now you feel that it's time that you say something, knowing that the fairy is now aware of you. So you can say this in your mind or quietly out loud. Dear fairy realm and all the fairies in this mound, I ask to meet the fairy that is most aligned with my spiritual journey. Please allow this fairy to make his or her presence known in the next 7 days. Do this kindly, please, and pleasantly for me and my life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You feel that your time in this area is now at a close. You step away from the fairy mound and turn to leave this gentle, quiet meadow. You walk back along the mushroom-lined trail, back through the tall grass and the colorful mushrooms, back to that main trail and the path from the door. You step back through the door into the center of your mind. The great door closes silently behind you. And you start to feel and notice that your body is there. Bring your attention back to the sensations of your body. Remember you're breathing slowly and deeply. Inhaling, bringing in that beautiful white light. Exhale as your attention settles back into your body, into your physical form. Take another deep breath in, breathing in that beautiful healing light. And exhale, wiggle your fingers and your toes. Give your wrists and ankles a little roll. Take another nice deep breath in. And when you exhale, you can open your eyes. And when you're back into normal waking period, you can journal any thoughts or experiences, because sometimes even in the meditation, like I said, it was a really gentle one. But even then, you may start having a little experience in that time. And then just pay attention to what's going on in the next 7 days. If you want to put it on the calendar, or if you have a journal that you'll mark it down as dates, do something along those lines so that you're staying aware of what's happening. And if you have any fun, interesting, exciting experiences, drop them in the comment section. It'll be interesting to see. I know experiences I've had and a few people I've worked with and been around. But it's always fun to see what other people have and see which of the fairy step forward. Sometimes you'll get one in one specific group. Sometimes you'll get multiples. It's interesting. And the reason that I'm doing this video in this way is the end of December, we'll go through and introduce, I think, 5 or 6. I might have a few more in there, I don't remember exactly. But we'll introduce you to a couple of the different clans and see if any of those are the ones that popped forward for you. And then we might do another meditation depending on if this is something you guys enjoy. But other than that, if you want to do the YouTube-y things, just drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you like this kind of content. Comment below after you've had some experiences. If you notice anything, that's always welcome. And if you feel that this is something that someone else might enjoy, you can go ahead and share that as well. I appreciate all of that. In the meantime, I hope you guys have an awesome week, and I will talk to you in a future video.